sẽ xin các cái file lại, cái file cái nhóm làm việc chính thức là chiều nay và thứ tư, thứ năm là cả ngày. Thì nhóm đó chính là cái nhóm sẽ được đào tạo một cách cụ thể, chi tiết, phương thức làm sao vận hành, cách nào thu hút học viên. Cấm ai cả, chứ là không phải rằng những người có trong danh sách đó mới được dự, mà tất cả ai dự cũng được. Và cái buổi cuối cùng là cái ngày thứ bảy, buổi sáng thứ bảy, theo tôi nghĩ đó là buổi rất hấp dẫn, tại vì Khoa đã bố trí một nhóm sinh viên, các em ở chất lượng cao, tức là có khả năng cái demo thực tế với ca bệnh như vậy thì chúng ta sẽ làm thế nào, và các em sẽ tương tác, và phòng đào tạo sẽ ngồi, tất cả những này có ghi hình lại, và chúng ta sẽ ngồi, chúng ta nghe, chúng ta xem thử coi họ sẽ làm thế nào với một nhóm cụ thể như vậy để chúng mình rút kinh nghiệm. Cho nên mong với thầy cô rằng nếu ai thu xếp được thời gian
từ sáng tới giờ là mình đã livestream hết, cho nên các thầy cô có thể vô cái trang mạng của PBL. Ví dụ như hiện tại chúng ta đang ở đây thì các thầy cô có thể ở bệnh viện, mình làm công việc ở văn phòng của mình cũng có thể theo dõi. Trong cái phòng PBL cũng bắt đầu từ chiều nay và ngày mai bắt đầu. So now we would like to go to the next part, and we would like to introduce Julie with the another topic, actually. That's all.
All right, so you're not going to listen to me talk on and on now. What we need is to fully understand your problem. Okay? We have done a presentation to you with many different concepts. We have not yet done the full PBL workshop to take you through the process of PBL. So, in order to make sure that in the PBL workshop we actually do address your concerns, we would like to use this session to invite you to share your challenges so that Julie and I can start thinking about it. I would also like to invite you to share some of your successes. So don't be shy. I think, I have to congratulate the VNU for the work you've already done trying over the last 10 years to do a type of PBL learning. And the problem that was put to me is that there's been a gradual understanding that there are many challenges and we don't all have the same idea of what PBL is. So the idea in this workshop is to help you clearly understand what is critical in making something a PBL. And if those elements are not there, don't call it PBL. Okay. So some people have already spoken to me about some sessions they run, and really they are clinical tutorials. The difference is, the big thing is problem first. The problem stimulates the discussion. If they've already been to a big lecture and information session and then they go to a tutorial to generally discuss it, well then it's a tutorial about the information lecture session. It's not actually a PBL. So what I hope is that gradually you'll get a stronger idea of what PBL is so that you can decide how this will work for you in your curriculum. Can I just bring up one issue first, just to get the conversation going? So there was a few people that came and spoke to us in the break. Is it all right if I use your challenge? Can I use your challenge? So the challenge, can I know your name? Sorry, your name is Maya. Thank you, Maya. So Maya was telling me that it's nice to meet you, Maya. She's organising a program of tutorials, and they've decided there are 4 topics, and she's trying to work out how to get the different tutors working to do the topics so the students get the same learning. But one of her challenges is that the specialist thinks they can only do the tutorial in their specialist case. Even though all the topics are in the same field of medicine, and even though the specialist knowledge is up here and the student knowledge only needs to be here, they do not feel confident to teach the other topics because it's related but not their actual specialty. And we had this problem too at Flinders. And so the different clinical groups had to talk about their comfort zone, their comfort in teaching beyond their absolute specialty. So, for example, our internal medicine group, the key tutors who lead are a cardiologist, the head of the cardiology department, and a gerontologist, the head of the gerontology service. And they teach all the topics in internal medicine because it keeps them curious and alive, keeps their knowledge fresh, and because they are quite expert at the student kind of level enough to guide the students in the tutorials. Okay, so I just wanted to say not every specialty will agree, and at Flinders the different specialty groups had to work out how they felt about that. Some of them brought in dedicated generalists because some specialists feel uncomfortable outside of their narrow zone, but it's a conversation for all of your clinical faculties. So that's one issue that was brought up. I'm sure there are hundreds more. What I might do, what I think would be good to do, just to get everybody in an active learning framework, is I might ask you for 5 minutes to turn to the person next to you and discuss what questions you have about PBL or what challenges you see coming forward. And once you've done that, agree with you what question you might put forward. So if I could set the time at 5 minutes, this is a standard active learning technique in large groups. Pair, discuss, share. Okay? So pair and share. So if people who are on their own could find a person to sit, 2s or 3s, doesn't matter, whichever group, but I'd like you to now discuss with each other what you're thinking about PBL, what questions you might like to ask for 5 minutes.
Không lấy được. Bây giờ muốn bắt ai nói anh đi bắt cho nè.
Okay, everybody. I think we know already some good questions coming up. So think about what question you want to put forward and how to express that. It was a very good question from over here. And sorry, I need to introduce, I'm Julie, and you are Dr. Vin. Yes, pleased to meet you. So Dr. Vin, his question, let me make sure that I'm correct in the question, is how do we make sure, you know, you've got all the different groups doing their PBL cases, how do we make sure that they're able to come to the same place for their assessment? Here in Vietnam you call it your evaluation. That's, we would tend to use the word assessment, evaluation, assessment, it's similar. Okay, so, and it's a really good question, and I know that one issue within our school is, oh, but all the students have to know the same knowledge. Okay? So the first thing I want to do is to show you through our curriculum model. So I'm hoping people can read it, and I'm hoping I can find the pointer. Here we go. A PBL curriculum is very carefully constructed. Okay? So, something wrong with my hand. I just can't press it. So at the top here on the screen, I don't know if it's big enough for everyone to see, there's a yellow box that says course outcomes. So we have a defined set of curriculum outcomes for our course. And we have 3 themes of knowledge, or 3 themes for learning, that flows through the course. So we have knowledge and health and illness. We have health professions, society, so that's about doctors and society, and personal and professional development. And we have doctor and patient, so all about the skills between doctor and patient. And our PBL cases cover mainly the knowledge of the health and illness, but it's mapped to the course outcomes. But also some health professions and society, again, mapped to the course outcomes, and also the related clinical skills mapped to course outcomes. And our PBL cases are designed, because it's about knowledge, it tends to sit more in knowledge of health and illness, but we also integrate the social sciences, society parts, public health, and also try and integrate the clinical skills. So every single case is designed to have learning outcomes, learning objectives that come from these three, centred around a patient case. And the students, the case is designed with a problem first, a patient presenting, for example, with a fever. Actually, I shouldn't use fever because that's what we're using in the workshop. Patient presents with vomiting and diarrhoea. And the knowledge domains may be things like fluid and electrolytes, resuscitation, all of that kind of thing. Particularly if it's a paediatric case, important for hydration. But also we'll dig into things like sodium channels, etc. The biochemistry behind it, physiology, pathophysiology, the microbiology, salmonella, shigella, that sort of thing, the anatomy of the gut. And then the health professions and societies might have a learning objective in the case about compulsory reporting for infectious diseases, and infection control and those sorts of things. And the clinical skills side of things might be about assessing dehydration and those sorts of things. Okay, so the case integrates, but there are clear learning objectives for each case, and they're mapped to achieving the course outcomes. So you have a very structured curriculum on which your cases are designed. In the clinical years, because we start in the preclinical part, well, it's not really, it's integrated, as you know, like yours. They do clinical and basic sciences. But in a clinical case, they may take it to a different level. It may be a case where they very much focus on diagnosis, management, and all that kind of thing. And the topic is vomiting and diarrhoea, the tutorial. But it's still a selected topic within the curriculum. It's still mapped to the curriculum. So the students are doing a case. The students are doing a case. And what happens in each group, what happens in each group is that group one, they have the case. Okay, they discuss. And the students are saying, well, this is what I know about vomiting and diarrhoea, and you have to be very careful about inputs and outputs and weight loss and those sorts of things. Or then they'll work through the mechanisms, and people will know a lot about cholera or shigella or that sort of thing. So they work out what they know. Okay, they know this much of what's got to be covered. Okay, so that's good. They know that. Okay, in their discussion, they realise that we're not sure about this bit, and we don't know this bit. Okay, we don't know. We don't know. They don't have necessarily the learning outcomes of the case in front of them, but the tutor does. So the tutor is helping them plot out what they know and what they don't know. So they will do some learning issues around these two. Okay, that's group one. Group two actually have a different set of knowledge. They know this bit, but what they don't know are these bits. Okay. So group two will end up having a slightly different conversation, and they will have different learning outcomes. So although the PBL discussion and the outcomes and the learning issues they come out with are different, they have covered all of their... They don't waste time going and studying what they already know, and in fact their discussion has probably reinforced what they already know. They've checked their facts with each other, and they know that that's the same for everybody. So does that help explain how we make sure that students are covering the curriculum, both with careful design of cases and mapping to the curriculum for the content. So this designs the playing field, and this is the game on the playing field. And as you know, every time a soccer team goes out with a competitor like Malaysia, they will play a different game. Tonight you hope they win. We hope. Okay. So the students are playing a game within a field that has been set with rules. The tutor guides those rules. Okay. The PBL case is what sets the agenda, the learning agenda. But the game plays out differently within each group. But at the end of the day, these groups will have matching sets of knowledge. Okay. Because they knew different stuff already and they've researched the stuff that they didn't know. And that's how we make sure. The other thing that happens, do you want to comment? Yeah, that's okay. The other thing that happens is that the students wander between the different PBL rooms and they see the different boards and they pick up from different groups. And sometimes they have a study group. Some students deliberately have study groups with members from different groups. So there's a whole host of ways in which the students develop collectively the right shared body of knowledge. Does that help explain that to everyone? We know this works because we did, when we changed, we had a set of knowledge exams, and then after the change we checked against the same knowledge exams, and the students performed just as well. They learn the same way. Of course you want them to perform even better, and that's another whole question. What we've discovered is they learn better skills. Okay, the knowledge is more embedded. So that was one question that just came from over here to try and help you understand. So you've been discussing. I hope that each of you are prepared to now come forward with more questions that you have about the PBL. So please do not hold back. I want to hear what your challenges are because we want to make sure that we can address them. Here we are. Do you want to ask? Did you want to
Hello, my name is Lu. I'm a legal instructor of the pediatric department. I have two questions for you. The first one is that from my point of view, I realized that we have, for example, in my pediatric department here, we have about 60 students, one big group, doing their clinical courses just in 7 or 8 weeks. So the time is really short. Yeah, it's a really short time. And at right now we have several ways to take the student to get their knowledge by case-based learning, problem-based learning, tutorial work. But I realize that PBL somehow is great way, in a short time for students to get their clinical skills, their medical knowledge in the same time. Yeah. And I wonder that if we just have shortness in faculties, like no many rooms, so not many blackboard yet for us to teach many groups of students. And what if we can apply just PBL for students doing their clinical research courses in the hospital, just PBL? Yeah, that's the first question. And the second question is that when we apply teaching them PBL, how can we evaluate, assess, how can we do our assessment for the students? As from where I stand, I understand that PBL mostly assess student skills like searching the information or presenting their idea. Yeah, and then we can confirm that the knowledge of them is right or wrong. Yeah, we guide them. And how can we assess them? Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the first question, I need to get my hand on the first question. The first question is about how you can change from a rotation, which is very busy, and bring PBL into that rotation. If I can relate to that. In the surgery rotation, which was the first rotation I worked with for PBL, the idea that the students are meant to do a lot of clinical on the ground, go to the attending ward rounds, go to the surgeries, go to the outpatients, but also do practicals and lectures and tutorials, and it's very, very busy. And every surgeon wanted to teach their pet topic. So they had burns and vascular ulcers and, etc., 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 etc. Every little, bruised big toe type, everything down to detail. And there wasn't enough time, and they had a tension. We want the students in the clinics. Why aren't they there? Oh, because they're in a lecture. Okay, so you had to balance these up. How do we deal with what we call curriculomegaly? Too much they need to know. So they went through an exercise of defining, this was for a 10-week rotation, okay? 10 topics, 1 per week. That would be the core curriculum through cases, PBL cases, okay? And not do any of the other lectures, etc. None of the others. So they had to have agreement, they had to have a discussion and agreement. Now, that was back in 2000, and those 10 topics, actually they've cut it down to 8 now, because everyone has to squeeze in, still are used and as the core of that surgery curriculum. It's refreshed. The topics are refreshed, of course. Okay, so they get to cover a liver case, they get to cover a swallowing case, they get to cover a major trauma case, etc., etc. They do those, so they define the curriculum. The other thing was that they did it in 2 shorter tutorials, so less time than the full-blown model. What that needs to really work is students who already know how to do PBL. So we have PBL before they come to the clinical rotation. The students coming into the clinical rotations already know how to do PBL students. If the tutors in the clinical don't do it the right PBL, the students say, no, we're not doing it that way, it's this way. So imagine that. Doesn't go down very well with some specialists. So it's critical that students are already PBL aware, like they've practiced. So that's your first, is that correct in your first question? How do we, okay. The second one then is how do you assess? Okay, so what students are learning in PBL is integrated kinds of knowledge around clinical cases. So we implemented a type of assessment called mini-case, okay. There are different sorts of ways you can do it. The Canadians use a sort of assessment called a key features assessment, okay. But their assessments are problem solving and reasoning, written assessments, okay. So you can put that kind of thing in place. And also you can use applied multiple choice. So PBL is mainly in the knowledge domain, but you might have it linked to some clinical domains. So you might also do some clinical cases for your assessments. So this is where the alignment with assessment is really important, because in the program I worked in, they had a big integrated assessment across the whole year. so that there was one organised major assessment. Now, that's very stressful for the students, so there's been a move back to breaking it into little pieces, but it's about who you have to help you organise assessments. As long as you know which types of assessments fit with PBL, the ones that are about applying, about problem solving, those sorts of things, then I think you can step ahead. I probably should leave the assessment for there. We have shifted to a new assessment system, but that's a big topic. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Does that help?
Yes, it's really helpful.
Yeah.
Yes, your solution to know about the same outcome in one class, but in our city there are many universities, and just if we apply the PBL in our university here, and after graduating, the student must continue to go to the postgraduate, but the other university don't apply the PBL, so there are different outcomes, and so very difficult to our student to continue his study.
Okay, so everyone has this concern. This is probably the most concern for schools who have made the decision to go to PBL. Firstly, they tend to do, if you were to look at curricula and actually look at the big course outcomes, the ones right at the end of the course, you would find they're nearly all the same, because there's no rocket science about what's important to know in medicine. The content we know, okay, it changes, we tweak here, etc. Our course, we developed our course outcomes. 2 or 3 years later, our Australian Medical Council issued its Standards of Medical Education Outcomes. They were almost identical. They could have picked up our curriculum and said these are the standards, okay? So that's one thing. Second, the students are a little bit different when they go into we have an intern year, when they go into the next level, the postgraduate level, but not so much different as you would think. And many people say after 6 weeks or so, you can hardly tell the difference. Yeah, I think that's one thing. I mean, we had a few things like, oh, you can tell a Flinders student. Oh, how? Well, because they ask questions. Is that a bad thing? But don't forget that PBL is one teaching method. You have many teaching methods in a curriculum. It's not the only teaching method. It's the teaching method you use if you want them to be active thinkers. Yeah. But the differences across the system, and it's the same in the United States and in Canada, the differences between the PBL schools and the other schools is not that great. Yeah. But it is very important to evaluate this. That's the key thing. So you must always make sure that you're evaluating how your students are achieving on your outcomes and reporting it down, identifying gaps. You do find gaps. Every school should do this, whether they're PBL or not. You find gaps. Okay, gaps that matter. We picked up a gap 1 year for a cohort of our students who did not seem to have developed, had exposure to, opportunity to develop some basic life support skills. So if you're evaluating and assessing at that level and identifying that and feeding the information down the system, you can correct that. Yeah, yeah. So it's an active management process. Yeah. Okay, more questions. So we have down the back here now.
I will introduce a little bit about myself. My name is Young. I come from VNU, and with the discuss of our group, we have I think that PBL is really a good techniques for the teacher can teach the student, especially in school in medicine. But we have some challenge.
Yes.
And we find one of challenge is how can the tutor motivate the passive student, the student can don't want to express their idea or give and or attend to the discussion. So let's say the questions.
You can learn in the next day. You can learn in the next day. Yeah.
Okay, we will be talking. This is a core topic in being a PBL tutor, about how to get the quiet students moving. But Julie and I have done some reading, and we also have some experience. We have a lot of international students come to our university. About 1/3 of the class is from an Asian background, international student. So we know that the students are used to different education systems where there's enormous emphasis placed on respect of the teacher and of listening and thinking and not necessarily questioning back, okay? So the preparation of the students is really important for a start as a school, to create an environment in the school where we say this is permitted, that this is how we would like you to learn because we think it will be beneficial, and we will support you to learn in this way. That preparation is really important. And so, as I said, we're going to do a little bit of preparation with your students, but it needs to be repeated and reinforced by all the staff, because that makes your role as a tutor much easier in terms of getting the students to be active. So part of that is, sometimes we have 2 tutorials to start with that are more about learning the PBL process than actually about the content. And it is, because we're saying you're going to learn how to be a PBL student, and we're going to, that's the purpose of this tutorial, we can really emphasise that driving of the discussion. And funnily enough, sometimes it's actually by the tutor not saying anything for a very long time until the group start to talk. So, but we'll talk about this in the workshop. So this is where you need your most experienced PBL tutors. We have another question.
I have one comment. Yeah, I have one comment about the question of Professor Vinh and of pediatric groups. As you know, in PMU, we apply the integrated curriculum at the beginning. And you know that our postgrad students, they can pass the residency entrance examination already. And most of them pass the master entrance examination of other university. So I think that we don't worry about that. If we apply PBL for our students here, they cannot pass the postgraduate entrance examination of other university. And we know that PBL is a way and method that our students can self-learning all the life long.
Yes.
So I think that they're very active and they are high. They are appreciated by the hospital. And with the question of pediatric group department, I can share the experience of OBGYN department. We know that PBL, that as my thinking, if I'm wrong, please correct me. I think that PBL is also a teaching method of literature, not all. I think that literature, but in a clerkship, our students have to study also literature and practice. So we have to define balance between literature and practice. And with my opinion, practice is very important, because you cannot have the patience to teach your student how they can feel the bell, how they can feel pain, for example. So practice is very important that we have to teach in our clerkship, also in duty in the evening. So you have choose the problem to teach. For example, in third year to teach which problem, fifth year which problem, sixth year which problem, not all the problem in the same time. So we always divide the time of the clerkship to teach literature by problem-based learning, and very important in practice. And with the skill practice, it's not evaluated, assessed by the PBL. You have to assess by OSCE, or you can have to see how your student examine the patient. Thank you.
You're entirely correct. Yes, it's very good. Yes, I agree with everything you say, and I actually think what you raised an issue there that I think is very important about the students learning to use the literature, and I think it is something, particularly in the clinical years, that can be made a bit more explicit in the PBL. So when students are presenting information, oh, where did you read that? What is the quality of that resource, etc. You know, just to start bringing those skills about, you know, being critical of the literature, and then knowing how to apply the literature. We know that, to the case, we know that one of the debates, problems, particularly in my country, is this question of why do doctors not translate evidence-based into practice? And I think making that explicit in a tutorial, what's your evidence? Okay, so let's talk about what that means in terms of the case, is a way, particularly in the clinical, that you might be able to drive that. I think that this is a good point that you raise. Yeah, so it's very good, and I agree. Yeah, just anything else you wanted to know? Yeah. Ethics, epidemiology, all these things can be brought into a case if we design it to do so. And I think you're right. Choose your topics for each cycle as we go through, and you may go from, you know, the common, more simpler through to complex. Yeah, as you go. Yeah. We have a question in the back there. Dr. Teifu.
Hello everybody, I come from the VNU School of Medicine. Actually, I review a little bit shortly about the curriculum. Actually, the School of VNU, the School of Medicine at VNU, we integrate the medical curriculum with the PBL in the beginning. And for the first 3 years of the School of Medicine, so almost the student have studied almost the mutual, the organ system, so that when they go to the hospital, they have the knowledge. But how come to improve the knowledge for the student at the hospital? That's a big problem. So that we structure teaching the PPL is based on the real patient, right? So we have the real patient at the hospital, and we teach on that, we base on that. So that help the student for the structure learning the PBL experience with the clinical exposure in the hospital environment. That's it.
I totally agree with you. And in where I come from, there was the surgeons that I worked with said, well, hang on, when they're at the bedside in a clinical case, that's reality, a real case. That's beyond simulation. You know, simulation is a high fidelity simulation of what's real. Real is the real thing. PBL is the slower, more exposed, more elaborated, etc. Why would we replace the real thing with PBL? And that rationale has to be really clear. And one of the things is, when you are a student with the doctors and seeing a real patient, if you are seeing them yourself, you are having to do that full clinical rehearsal yourself. But when you're with another doctor in an outpatient clinic or something, you can't see what's going on in the doctor's head. Yeah. So you cover many cases, you cover the curriculum, but how deep is your understanding? So using PBL cleverly for the really core things that you really want to unpack and really get the students to think through is really that balance of reality, the hot, what we call hot action, with the tutorial which allows us to unpack the cold action, where the students can really get inside the thinking. Because as a beginner, when I drove a car, my first drive, I was very slow. And then gradually I began to put sequences of motion together into actions, and now I can drive fast. Well, thinking is similar. We have to think slow first, and then as we start to chunk our knowledge together into schema, semantic networks, then we think fast, then we become pattern recognition. Yeah. So it's the balance, and each clinical department needs to work out that balance. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I won't tell you how to do it first. Each of our clinical departments had to do it. Yeah. More questions.
So I have one comment about this problem. The first one is in the future, according to Ministry of Health and Education, our graduate students must pass a national examination. So in the future, maybe from 2020, so all medical schools must change the curriculum to a problem-based curriculum, because all students must pass a national examination. Thanks.
Wow, so knowing the nature of that examination will be very important. Knowing the nature of the evaluation, of the assessment and the domains it will cover, because that allows you to design down. Because there are many ways to Rome, we say, in expression in my country, many ways to get there, but you still get there. So the interesting part is whether you get there alive and kicking and ready to go on, or whether you get there exhausted. You know, so you know what I mean? So you design your teaching method to make sure that your students get there alive and kicking and ready to go on. Yeah.
So in this national examination, the students must do many, for example, modified essay questions, or some questions about many clinical situations. Yes. So problem-based curriculum is very essential, very important for them, to prepare them for national examinations.
Yes. So that's a similar, I was talking about mini cases, that's a similar type, modified essay questions, but in sequence. Yeah, and scenario-based questions, clinical, and so they're always having to read a scenario, problem solve it in order to answer the questions. It sounds like there's some alignment there. Yeah. Whether or not you think national exams are a good thing, that sounds like there's some alignment.
And the second one, I want to comment that maybe in the medical curriculum for the first years, the second years and third years, the problem is very important. Yes. And we begin with a problem first. But in 5 years, 6 years medical curriculum, we must introduce a more clinical case, to change into clinical case.
Yes. Yes, that is important, which raises another aspect that I could perhaps discuss with you. There will be a curriculum, therefore, of types of clinical cases, won't there? So mapping to those will be important across your 6 years. There is a potential with problem-based learning that you can add a further stage or modify it a little bit so that the students do one case but then have multiple cases that they then work through. So, and they can be mapped. So the students get good at more and more cases, can apply their knowledge to more and more cases, so that whatever cases they're getting in the national exam, they're able to apply their knowledge. And I know that the literature on clinical reasoning suggests the more cases you're exposed to, the better your reasoning. Yeah, because reasoning is case contextual, but there is translation to similar cases. And so the students may not have seen that case exactly that's in the national exam, but because they've rehearsed so many cases, they have a better chance of doing well. Yeah. So it's all about context, exactly.
I agree with the mini case supporting to be problem-based learning. And normally the national examination in the whole medical school in Vietnam, there is two parts. One part is more theory, and we apply the most of that is one test, MCQ. But that is only more theory. But for practice, you have one examination with case study. Yeah, because practice decision making, examination, everything, the skill with case study always. Someone you said that we can make only one test with MCQ, but that is we don't agree that because the MCQ you cannot control or examine the clinical knowledge or the clinical skill. Only case study. Yes. Yeah, and we apply that. And here it is a VNU school of MSc. We have on the top part. This is one mini thesis, one mini thesis. Yes. Yeah, a mini thesis to make it the student maybe know how to make one research or some or very small. But we have a 3-1 MCQ, another test one case study, and one mini thesis.
Yeah,
I think this is but that's a problem. That is how many the proportion of PBL in the proportion. Not too much, but how to, because this cannot replace the mini case in the practice.
Build the mini cases onto it. Is possible. And the story I was telling you about in Manchester, the paper by O'Neill that I think is in the packs. Some of the power of their PBL tutorials was the students bringing each of their clinical cases as presenting like a mini case, and then the discussion extending to those mini cases, building their knowledge further. But yes, so your students, if they're doing this sort of assessment, when they get to the national exam, that format will not be a surprise. You know, it's good. You are preparing them for it. Yeah.
Any question? What do you do? Question or comment? In your university, and medicine, pharmacy, you have experience or some question about that? Or the Eastern International?
Can I do a little demonstration? Yeah. As you can see, after all this discussion, we have a board full of words. You know, I've tried to fill it as much as possible. But part of PBL and part of working collaboratively is co-construction of information. So what we've got up here is a lot of words and a lot of I've put up comments everywhere. So after a PBL, you'll have something like this. But then you'll have other boards. You need lots of boards. Because then what we'll do is that we will look at this and say, we have got things that are similar themes here. Now we can pull those themes out and put them on another board and work in them more closely. So the clinical issues that have been raised can actually be then developed even further by the group discussing it. But it's visually in front of you, so you can see it, and everybody in the group has a different way of looking at that problem and has a different suggestion for that problem. And I call that the rich learning soup. You know, you've got a big bowl of soup that at the end that you can really make some sense in. But you're also putting it in its context. And by putting things in a context, it means that your brain, which if we look at some of the how we learn and how much information that we can put into our working memory, it's actually not very much. It's only about seven items that we can put in. But what we want to do is we want to put it into our long-term memory. And the context actually enables us to chunk it. So I can actually have all different bits of information and call that a chunk. And I can put that in. So that could actually be about the assessment. So we're chunking our assessment information into our brain. When we come up with a problem, say, maybe I'm sure you will encounter a problem with the national examination that's going to come up that might not align with what you've got. You've already got this chunked here, and then you can get other people who've got different forms of chunking to form together, and then you'll be able to problem solve and you'll reach the sky. It's, as a tutor, it's spine-tingling. Do you know what I mean by that? It's very exciting to see the students all of a sudden get it. And it's, as a tutor, you will love it, honestly. It really is amazing. Thanks.
Thanks, Jill. I mean, I think it's really important to point out that, you know, this is like a PBL board. We have done a sense, and this is what we've shared, so everyone knows what we've talked about. I mean, it helps people to take those knowledge leaps when they can see how everything works together. So that's what's happening in the PBL. It's nice to draw that analogy. Is anything else anyone would like to say at this stage? Yeah?
I think this term is out because this is the 12. In Vietnam, we said don't pass the 12. Everything is no more effective when they pass it. Nghĩa là mưa gió đừng quá ngọ mà. Và bây giờ là tới ngọ rồi, kéo thêm chỉ là vô duyên thôi chứ không được gì hết. Nói chung là buổi sáng như thế này, chúng tôi chỉ xin nói một câu cuối cùng thế này. Thực sự cái curriculum gọi là system based interpret curriculum đang làm ở đây, chúng tôi đang trao đổi nhiều với các anh chị đó. Thực sự nó cũng là một cái gọi là modify chứ không phải là một cái module hoàn toàn đâu. Có nghĩa rằng có thay đổi một số, vì các anh chị biết rằng luật không cho phép đụng chạm tới năm thứ nhất. Có nghĩa là chính trị, Mác Lênin, tư tưởng Hồ Chí Minh, từ giáo dục thể chất là miễn bàn. Chứ còn nếu đưa các chuyên gia mà cái thiết kế đó thì những cái đó nó không có trong năm thứ nhất. Và họ đưa vô trong đó những module của năm thứ nhất rồi. Nhưng mà năm thứ nhất không được đụng đến, coi như phạm hủy. Cho nên trong năm thứ nhất vẫn y như là tất cả các trường khác. Chỉ thay đổi trong năm thứ hai, năm thứ ba và năm thứ tư thôi. Còn tới cuối năm thứ tư, năm thứ năm, năm thứ sáu chúng tôi lại trở lại clamp sheet. Clamp sheet tức là giống như là nội ngoại sản nhi. Như vậy cũng là rotation giống như những trường khác chứ không làm hết đâu. Bởi vậy cho nên là thực sự đánh giá cái này nó như thế nào không phải là dễ. Nhưng mà rất mong các anh chị ở các cái bệnh viện khác đó, như nơi khác đó, có sinh viên của Đại học Khoa Y Đại học Quốc gia, các anh chị đánh giá ủng hộ những người đó. Đứng về mặt lý thuyết thì các em nó chịu khó rồi, tại vì nghe nói rằng đây là những phi công lái máy bay thí nghiệm, cho nên là phải cố gắng nhiều. Vì vậy cho nên ra trường rất là chịu khó học, và tất cả các em đó khi thi các cái giống như chị Lợi nói, khi thi vô các cái tuyển sinh sau đại học của Đại học Y Dược, Đại học Phạm Ngọc Thạch là đều đỗ với cái tỷ lệ rất cao, chứng tỏ rằng không có vấn đề gì khiếm khuyết đứng về mặt lý thuyết. Còn cái thực hành thì tôi chưa dám nói. Còn thực hành thì theo chúng tôi chắc phải đến đó sau 5-10 năm nữa, như em đó trở lại làm ở các bệnh viện, có phát huy được không, có tính được không do những cái chuyện xem đi hay là xem lập trình vân vân các thứ, thì lúc đó mới đánh giá sau. Chúng tôi hoàn toàn không nói, nhưng chỉ nói rằng không đến nỗi có những cái học để cho không thể theo kịp tất cả các trường khác. Còn lại chúng ta sẽ cùng đánh giá với nhau, không phải trường này trường kia vân vân các thứ, để có được một cái cách đào tạo tốt nhất cho y khoa. Và đấy là mong muốn của những cái buổi như hôm nay. Theo tôi thì buổi sáng ngày hôm nay cũng đã đến đây là vừa rồi. Xin mời các chúng ta tạm nghỉ ở đây. Có cái bữa ăn mời tất cả các anh chị, mời tất cả các anh chị giữ đúng không? Mời tất cả xuống dưới nhà ăn. Và chiều nay thì những người nào tham gia cái khóa này ta dự sẽ có những cái thí dụ hẳn hoi, tức là làm trên những cái cụ thể, và chúng ta sẽ trở lại đây vào sáng ngày thứ Sáu và cho những cái thảo luận có tính chất hơi chung cho đẹp sáng thứ Sáu. Vâng, có cái gì về ban tổ chức?
Cảm ơn. Thưa các thầy cô, là buổi sáng workshop buổi 1 hôm tới đây là